at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA. We are based in West Africa, in Nigeria. We breed 6 tropical crops for sub-Saharan Africa in terms of adaptation. And we've been applying modern technologies to improve the delivery of products to smallholder farmers in this environment. So my talk today will focus more on what we have done in terms of improving genetic gain in 6 tropical crops in Africa. As you may know, that global hunger is a growing problem that we are all looking up to address. The situation will be much more dire in sub-Saharan Africa as the population is growing at a faster pace than we are delivering food. We find that the demand for more food is growing at a rate of about 2% per annum, whilst breeding programs in the region are delivering genetic gains which are below 1.5% for a long time. Therefore, our work is focused on make sure that how do we improve the delivery of these breeding programs. So in this space, we've been working in collaboration with the private sector and other public breeding programs that are led by governments or national programs in Africa. In the private sector, we've worked with so many corporate breeding programs like the Bayer Crop Science, for example, is an example, collaborating with IITA. The work that we have done up to 2023 summarized and reported in a special edition of the Plant Genome of 2024, volume 17, number 2. So if you read that, you'll find most of our work is summarized there across all the 6 crops and other collaborating CG centers operating in this space. Our assumption is that plant breeding can help produce better crops and higher yields for the benefit of smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. We all understand the challenges are global, they are not small, or they range from systemic crises like poverty, unemployment, food insecurity, and malnutrition, amidst a climate change crisis and also degradation of the environment and the biodiversity. As if this is not enough, there are also social challenges such as gender and social inequality in this area. And the demand for resources to improve breeding programs is growing amidst diminishing funding sources. You all know the current global challenges and uncertainty. The opportunity that we have is to exploit frontier technologies and innovation such as artificial intelligence, gene editing, and nanotechnology to improve the delivery of these crop programs. So our aim is to deliver annual genetic gains above 2% to match the annual food demand growth of about 2% in sub-Saharan Africa. The IITA breeding programs align with the rest of the CG research innovation strategy, where we envision a world with sustainable and resilient food systems that deliver improved livelihoods and greater social equality. How do we contribute to this? We implement collaborative breeding programs with a shared vision to empower millions of smallholder farmers in the global south. We collaborate with national breeding programs, advanced research institutions, and public-private partnerships to deliver a collective impact. Our key breeding objectives include breeding for climate resilience so that we deliver crop varieties that can withstand high levels of drought, heat, and flooding amidst other challenges. Improving nutritional content in these crops through biofortification of staple crops is another objective. And most importantly, for the smallholder farmers, we want to deliver a higher productivity and yield to meet the demands of a growing population. In terms of focus of product, we focus on staple crops that are critical for food security, legumes critical for protein and micronutrients, and also root and tuber crops that can deliver nutrition and also important for industrialization, like starch from cassava is a good example of industrialization of these crops. How do we breed? We follow traditional breeding techniques to develop new varieties. We also leverage genetic markers to accelerate the processes, and we are employing genomic data to predict performance and select superior varieties. And we are integrating gene editing, artificial intelligence, and other tools in our breeding programs. We measured genetic gain in 6 IITA crop programs using the method of McKay of 2011. So it is very important that we monitor the levels of genetic gain in our crops so that we can make improvements. We will make sure that we want to increase diversity, the accuracy, and our selection intensity. At the same time, we need to shorten the breeding cycles in order to enhance breeding genetic gain in this. So we predicted adjusted means of our genotypes using mixed models, and the linear regression approaches we used regression on the year of origin in order to estimate genetic gain. The focus was on economic traits such as yield and some of the quality traits like starch content. In order to do this, we employed two-stage checks in all trials, regardless of location and time, to enable connectivity of the data. I'll just show examples of how we estimated genetic gain in one crop, although we measured in 6 crops. So in cowpea, for example, we looked at 51 trials, 12 years of data from 2010 to 2021 across 12 locations. About 251 entries were tested, including 8 checks, and a number of traits from maturity, yield, 100 seed weight we measured. You can see that there is varying levels of genetic gain depending on the trait, for example, in the graphics on the right side of the screen. For days to flowering, it's less than 1%. The same for days maturity. And for the yield, about 1%, whereas for seed yield, we measured about 1.49% from 2004 to 2016. This is below the desired. We desire a genetic gain which is above at least 1.5% is our target. The matrix you find in the bottom left-hand corner shows the years 2010 to 2021. And the numbers in the matrix are just the number of entries that are in common in all trials across different years. We use the same method for measuring genetic gain in cassava. I won't go through the details apart to say that this was based on 11 locations and 8 years of data. But in terms of delivery, you find that fresh yield for cassava, we're hitting about 2.5%, which is above the desired 1.5%. Also, for the dry yield, we're hitting above 3.53%, which is almost double the desired 1.5%. But in other traits, such as dry matter content, it's about 1.4%, whereas resistant to cassava mosaic disease was about 0.56%. So in cassava, we're making greater progress compared to cowpea because we're implementing genomic selection as from 2012. What you see in the graphics is just a summary of all of about 2 other crops. I've talked about cowpea, I've talked about cassava. We also measured genetic gain in maize, for example. In our yellow maize pipeline, our genetic gains were about above 3.5%, whereas in the white maize program, for yield, we're about 1.8%, both being above the target of 1.5% for yield. We also measured in yam. Yam is a special tuber crop for Nigeria, for example, and the greater part of tropical West Africa. There's been limited resources devoted to breeding this crop for a long time. You can see in the graphics that in the far right corner there, that total yield, we hit about 2% annual increase in terms of genetic gain in this crop. But it also varies by the traits understood. What can be done to maximize genetic gain in these crops to ensure that we perform above 1.5%? We need to achieve certain strategies. For example, adopting genomics can enable faster breeding, accurate selection, and improve the traits. Through also gene editing is some of the strategies that we've put in place. We've seen that coming through in cassava, and we achieved less in cowpea where not employed this strategy. We also want to minimize operational costs and making sure that we maximize the genetic gain per dollar invested by the funders. And we have found that we can also establish robust digital data management and analytics systems will be quite helpful. But most importantly, integration of customer insights in selection of these varieties will increase adoption. And above all, capacity building and collaboration of breeding programs and institutions can play a significant role in accelerating these genetic gains. In order to do this, we have invested a lot in terms of collaborating with the private sector. All the CG centers such as CIMIT, IITA, ICRISAT, IITA, the National Rice Research Institute have been involved in collaboration with the private sector. Almost all the big four, Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta, and Advanta, working on at least 11 crops in the area of staple crops, legumes, root and tuber crops that are important for food security, nutrition, and industrialization. So one institution alone cannot achieve everything. We need to share capacity. We need to share infrastructure. We need to share knowledge if we are to sustain the genetic gains above 1.5%. And we find that we need to integrate modern approaches in our traditional breeding through these public-private partnerships so that we can deliver climate resilience, enhance nutritional content, productivity, and yield. The areas of collaboration with the private sector where we can get much gains include the areas of transgenics, including commercialization of GMOs. I'm sure my previous speaker talked about BT maize. We're introducing that in West Africa at the moment in collaboration with the Bayer Crop Science, among others. Breeding process improvements is an area where we are investing resources in collaboration with the private sector. Seed production technologies and employing gene editing capabilities. We collaborate a lot with Corteva in this area, leading to development of varieties that are resistant to a number of lethal viruses in Africa, including maize lethal necrosis disease in East Africa. Artificial intelligence is another area we want to make a lot of gains, including mechanization of operations in tropical Africa. I have talked about genomic selection. It has been shown to be effective in crops such as cassava, maize, rice, wheat, and yam when employed by the CGIAR breeding programs. These are the areas where we've seen a lot of progress, including improving grain yield of maize under challenging environment in yellow maize. We've also seen a lot of improvements in cassava as well as a result of increased accuracy when we employed genomic selection. The main aim is to reduce the breeding cycle from 6 to 7 years down to at least 2 to 3 years. Speed breeding is another area that we think that rapid generation advancement can speed up, can reduce the time it takes to develop new varieties, and it's working. We've looked at in cassava, for example, photoperiod extension and pruning and use of plant growth regulators has been also effective in reducing the period from 6 to 7 months to 3 to 4 months in late flowering progenitors. At the same time, also use of growth regulators has also resulted in increased fruit set and seeds. Gene editing, yes, has been employed across both grain crops and clonal crops such as banana, the cooking bananas in Africa, in the areas of Fusarium mold resistance, banana streak virus, and also striga resistance in sorghum, including insect resistance as well, plus virus-resistant potatoes. These are some of the areas where we employed technology. Coming back to our special case of cowpea, we have seen that after measuring 12 to 15 years of data, significant gains were measured in 3 pipelines. One pipeline scoring 2.65, that's short duration cowpea, whereas the other pipeline was below the 1.5 mark. So we still have a lot of work to do. But when we checked how the gains came through in cowpea, it was through assembling sufficient genetic diversity. Effective selection methods were used, plus credit goes to modernization, improved experimentation in terms of the designs used, and the analysis method using linear mixed models, and also employment of genetic markers, including speed breeding. But most importantly, including producer and consumer insights and reducing operational costs were some of the drivers for positive change. In conclusion, I would like to say further improvements of tropical crops with respect to modernization will come through employment of modern techniques. Genomic selection, gene editing, and speed breeding are crucial for us to sustain the genetic gains to levels above 1.5%. We also see that we need to drive the adoption of these varieties. And this will come through including customer insights in our varietal selections. It's not easy for smallholder farmers because you go down into social aspects, preferences, and so many other factors interact with science when you are developing a product for a smallholder farmer. We also see that it is an essential element is to monitor the success and continuously measure genetic gain as we go. We need to monitor this, and employing robust data management and analytics tools is very, very important for us to sustain genetic gains. But the most important element of our breeding programs is collaboration and capacity building, sharing capacity with international organizations, public-private partnerships through expertise, resources, and GEMPLAS, including access to funding and other opportunities, is one of the best or crucial elements to sustain genetic gains. I would like to thank you for your time. Those who want to know more about our work, please read the Plant Genome special edition of June 2024.